Well, hello there, everyone. Today, I'll be taking some time to thoroughly explain the specific variable we've created, and I'll do this by walking you through a practical example. Therefore, for our demonstration, we're going to proceed by making a selection based on the annual frequency encompassing the entire available period. Specifically, the particular variable we're focusing on is known as gross profit to asset. And then, we can connect that important information to the yearly stock market returns. Does profitability always lead to a high rate of return? It has been observed in various research efforts, for instance, the work published by Novi and Marx back in 2013, that a significant connection does, in fact, exist. So, with that in mind, we are going to proceed by carefully following this particular line of reasoning. And right here, in this very next section, we will be demonstrating to you a truly important and valuable tool that we can effectively utilize. So, I'll be making use of a wide array of the functions that are readily available to us. For example, right here we have things like the lag function, the difference calculation, the percentage change, and also the power variable. Then there's the scale variable, and of course, various mathematical operations. So we're considering z-score transformation, an interaction term, and then industrial level aggregates. For the purposes of our current analysis, I will be focusing on the z-score transformation. We're specifically looking at the ratio of gross profit to total assets. The fundamental reason for this particular approach is that I personally need to accurately assess and quantify the relative performance of various firms, because it is precisely that comparative aspect, the relative standing, which holds significantly greater importance and relevance within the complex field of asset pricing, as opposed to merely considering their absolute performance metrics. So the z-score will effectively standardize this particular value, making it comparable across all other firms within each individual year. So one might opt to standardize across the entire population. However, I personally find it more effective to standardize within each distinct period. This is because the underlying patterns, the distributions, and indeed the population itself are all subject to evolution over time, and so too are the relationships. So what I intend to do is apply the z-score for each individual year across all of the firms, and then I will proceed to generate a brand new variable. So, my next action will be to implement the statistical method known as Winsorization. The fundamental reason for undertaking this is my intention to effectively mitigate the disproportionate influence of extreme outliers. Therefore, I will commence this procedure by Winsorizing the very next variable within our current dataset. And so, this is now the calculated z-score value for the gross profit or the overall margin.
Winsorize the data at the 1% level.
And then I will proceed to Winsorize the y variable, which represents the annual stock return.
And once again at the 1% threshold.
So let's consider that we initially started with just 2. Now we have many more because we've gone and created these new variables. Now before I proceed to run the regression analysis to properly examine the relationship, I find it quite helpful to examine the XY chart. However, in this instance, it's quite challenging to interpret due to the numerous outliers present. We have numerous data points present here, but unfortunately they are not clearly visible to us. This is primarily because the plotted line extends to an exceptionally high value, representing an extreme outlier in terms of gross profit relative to assets. Consequently, to address this issue, we will be employing an X variable defined as the Winsorized Z-score. And for our Y variable, we are going to select the Winsorized Y. Now, in this particular section, we don't have anything to type in. By default, this option is already assigned to the Y variable. Here we have a clearer picture, but still many outliers, because a firm level variation can hardly be explained by one factor. We still observe many firm-specific movements, which is why we don't see a perfectly straight line, but you can say that there may be a relationship.
Examining the various levels of the company's gross profit to asset ratio. We are able to perform a regression analysis in a very short amount of time.
And then we can proceed to choose the Y, which is the specific Winsorized variable.
And then we can proceed to run the regression analysis. Here we have a significant effect with a p-value that is under 5%.
Another important point to consider is if you're looking to establish a stronger relationship, we can then aggregate these two distinct variables at the overall industry level. So let's just go back up to that particular section that we had used earlier. Right, let's proceed then. We need to construct a brand new variable by carefully aggregating every single variable, specifically at the overall industry level.
So, if you were to just take a look.
Down here, at the actual industry level of operations, let's begin with the Winsorized Z-score of gross profit to asset, and then we'll aggregate that at the SIC 2-digit level. Once we have the average, we then proceed to create a new variable. This particular variable will specifically represent the data at an industry level. Following the same logic, we can subsequently apply this identical approach for the y variable as well. But we must select the winsorized data, which serves as the final y variable that we ultimately used, and then subsequently we aggregate that
at the 2-digit essay code classification.
And of course, you can easily refer to the provided chart to clearly observe and understand the underlying relationship between these different data points. So very quickly, I can then proceed to pick.
And then I'll be able to choose the right one for me.
You will notice here that the level of variation is less than the last time, because now we are dealing with industry level. What this implies is that at the individual firm level, the observed variation is considerably reduced, since we are primarily working with industry level data and variables. This then allows us to swiftly execute the regression.
Using the relevant industry level variables. Now I just selected the Y. I will proceed with selecting the industry level X. And then I'm going to run every single one. Yes.
This particular analysis will reveal a truly significant finding, and the p-value we obtained here is exceptionally small, practically approaching 0, which clearly indicates an extremely high level of statistical significance for these findings. So the core idea is that we might not always work with the original variables. We may need to transform them appropriately to fit the specific study we are conducting. Thank you for listening.